She said I wasn't romantic anymore. Then I found love letters in her drawer. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who would sit in silence, staring at a single envelope like it held the weight of my entire marriage. But that was exactly where I found myself one rainy Thursday morning, alone in our bedroom, holding a cream-colored envelope with delicate cursive handwriting on the front. But let me go back. My name's James. I'm 41. I work in IT. Nothing glamorous, but it pays. The bills. I married Claire when I was 30. She was the kind of woman who made you feel like the world paused when she smiled. For a long time, I thought we were the lucky ones, the kind of couple that grew stronger with time. We had our routines. Sunday, brunches, movie nights, her singing off-key in the kitchen while I made coffee. It was never fireworks every day, but it was steady, comforting, real. At least I thought it was. A few months ago, Claire sat me down after dinner. She didn't look angry, just disappointed. "I miss how things used to be," she said softly. "You don't bring me flowers anymore. We don't go on spontaneous trips. You're not romantic like you used to be." I didn't get defensive. I just nodded. Because part of me agreed. Life had gotten busy. Work deadlines, mortgage, her, late-night shifts at the hospital. I figured that kind of lull was normal, that we'd bounce back like we always did. But there was something in her voice that night, like she wasn't just complaining, like she was warning me. Still, I didn't panic. I brought her tulips the next week, made dinner reservations, even left her a little note on her pillow, like I used to do in the early years. She smiled, thanked me, but it felt hollow, like she was playing along. And then she started coming home later. More night shifts, more work stuff. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. She was my wife, and trust was the foundation of everything, right? Then one day, while she was in the shower, I was looking for my tablet charger. She always borrowed it, and I figured she might have tossed it in her nightstand drawer. I wish I hadn't opened it. Among the usual clutter, chapstick, pens, receipts, there was a small stack of envelopes tied together with a ribbon. Not mine, not something I recognized, and the handwriting wasn't hers. I stared at it, my fingers trembling before I even touched them. Something about the way they were bundled, hidden, felt sacred or secret. I knew I shouldn't have. I knew opening one was crossing a line, but curiosity, fear, and some sinking instinct twisted in my gut, and I did it anyway. The first letter was dated from 2 months ago. "Claire," it began. "I still think about your laugh, the way you bite your lip when you're thinking. I can't believe we've managed to steal all these little moments, and yet I want more. I want all of you." It didn't say a name, just an initial. J. I stood there for what felt like forever, rereading the lines over and over, hoping maybe I misunderstood. Maybe this was from an old flame she never threw away. Maybe it was from me and I just forgot writing it. But the handwriting wasn't mine. The words weren't mine. The passion wasn't mine. I wanted to confront her right then. Burst into the bathroom, wave the letter, demand an explanation. But something stopped me. Pride, fear, maybe both. I slid the letters back into the drawer, exactly how I found them, closed it slowly, sat on the bed, and listened to the sound of the shower running, wondering how long this had been going on, and why. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to her, listening to her breathing, every inhale a blade across my chest. She rolled over, half asleep, and murmured, "I love you," and I almost believed her. But from that moment on, something inside me began to shift. I started watching more closely, not accusing, not prying, but noticing. The way she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she guarded her purse. The way she no longer asked about my day. I became a ghost in my own home, haunting the corners of our shared life, watching everything, feeling nothing. I didn't tell anyone, not my brother, not my best friend, not even my therapist, because part of me wasn't ready to admit it was real. That my wife, the woman who once cried when I proposed, was giving pieces of her heart to someone else. And still, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. I just wanted to understand. Over the next few weeks, I lived in a quiet storm. Nothing exploded. No screaming matches. No dramatic confrontations. Just silence. The kind that settles over you like fog, slowly, until you forget what the sun feels like. Claire went on with life as usual. Or at least she tried. She still made her morning coffee. Still folded my socks the way I liked. Still smiled when she said goodnight. But I saw through it all now. Every gesture felt rehearsed, like she was playing the part of a loving wife while her heart was elsewhere. Started noticing the patterns, the gaps in her stories, the way she said she was staying late for a patient, but her scrubs weren't wrinkled the way they usually were after a long shift, how her perfume lingered stronger than usual when she walked through the door. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for the truth. And sometimes the truth is the most painful thing of all. One night, as we lay in bed, she turned to me and said, "Do you ever feel like we've become roommates?" It caught me off guard. I was used to her being distant, but this was the first time she'd put it into words. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I married, the one I built a life with. And for a split second, I saw pain behind her eyes, regret maybe, or guilt. "Do you?" I asked gently. She hesitated, then whispered, "Sometimes." I nodded. I didn't lash out. I didn't accuse her. I just let the silence answer for me. The next morning, she left early. Earlier than usual, said she had to prep for a surgery. I watched her leave, then sat at the kitchen table for hours, staring at the untouched toast she'd left for me. My hands kept reaching for my phone, like I wanted to call someone, anyone, but I didn't. Instead, I opened her drawer again. I know I shouldn't have. It wasn't about invading her privacy anymore. It was about confronting the reality I was too afraid to say out loud. There were more letters now, 5, maybe 6, all tied together, all signed by J. I read them one by one, each word another nail into the version of my life I thought I had. The way you looked at me last night, I swear, it was like I was the only man in the world. I don't know how much longer we can keep this a secret. I want to be with you. Truly. Tell me you feel the same, Claire. Tell me I'm not imagining this. I don't know what hurt more, the romantic tone of the letters or the fact that they were recent. This wasn't a relic of the past. It was alive. It was now. And the man, Jay, he wasn't some fantasy. He was real, present, taking the parts of my wife I didn't even realize were up for grabs. That night, she brought home Thai food, my favorite. I could tell she was trying. Her laugh was louder. She touched my hand across the table, but it felt forced. I played along. I smiled, asked about her day, told her the curry was perfect, because part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, this was her way of ending it. Maybe she was coming back to me. The next few days, I saw glimpses of the Claire I fell in love with. She texted me sweet things during lunch, left sticky notes on my mirror, even surprised me at work with coffee. But here's the thing. No one tells you about betrayal. Once the trust is gone, everything feels suspicious, even kindness. I kept asking myself, was this guilt or love? Was she choosing me again, or just trying to hide what she'd done? And then, on a quiet Sunday morning, everything changed. I was doing laundry, her scrubs mostly. When I reached into the pocket, I found a receipt. Not unusual, but this one was for a boutique hotel downtown. One I'd never been to. A single night stay, 2 days ago. That was the same night she said she stayed with a patient who had post-surgical complications. I held the receipt like it was burning my hand. My heart didn't race. My vision didn't blur. It was worse than that. It was calm. Painfully, excruciatingly calm. That was the moment something inside me snapped, but not in the way people expect. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things. I just folded the receipt, put it in my wallet, and went back to folding her laundry because I knew what I needed now. Not revenge, not even justice. Clarity. I needed to understand who this man was. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The letters, the hotel. It was all too abstract, like reading about a fire in a newspaper versus standing in front of the flames. And most of all, I needed to know who Claire really was, not the version she showed, me, not the woman I created in my head, but the real her, the woman who could hold my hand with one and write love letters to another man with the other. And so, I made a decision. I didn't tell her I knew. I let the days pass, calmly, kept smiling, kept being the man she once said had lost his romance. And all the while I was watching, noticing, planning, because love makes you blind. But betrayal? It sharpens your vision like nothing else. Something inside me shifted after I found that hotel receipt. It wasn't anger, not the explosive furniture-breaking kind. It was quieter, more dangerous, like the calm right before a storm knows exactly where it's going. I started paying attention, not just to Claire, but to everything. Her calls, her messages, her expressions when she thought I wasn't looking. I wasn't being paranoid. I was finally seeing clearly. I began noticing her phone habits, the way she always kept it face down on the table, how she flinched slightly when it buzzed. She didn't even realize it, but her body betrayed her long before her words did. One afternoon, she left her phone charging in the living room while she showered, a rare moment. Almost like a gift. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, thinking about how much I wanted to go through it, and how wrong that felt. I wasn't trying to control her. I wasn't even trying to catch her. I just wanted to know the truth, but I didn't need her phone to find it. Instead, I began retracing the letters. J. That was all I had. No last name, no details. But there were clues. One letter mentioned our last coffee near the hospital. Another talked about the way you laughed in your green scrubs. And then, one line that stopped me cold. It's always the conference room that feels the safest. Claire worked in a mid-sized hospital downtown. I didn't know every person she worked with, but she had mentioned a new administrator a few months back. His name was Julian, mid-30s, divorced. Sharp guy, she said. She only ever brought him up once. That was enough. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I started rebuilding myself. Not out of spite, but because I finally realized how far I'd let myself go. I used to run every morning before work. I started again. Just 30 minutes a day, but it helped. I used to paint, landscapes mostly. Hadn't touched a brush in years. One night, after she fell asleep, I dug out my old easel from the garage and began again. It felt good. Centering. And I started reconnecting with myself and with the life I had before my world became all about us. I didn't do it to win her back. I did it to find me again. The irony was, she noticed. She began commenting on the changes. You look good in that shirt. You've been quieter lately. Are you working out again? She looked at me like I was new, like I was suddenly interesting again, but I wasn't doing any of it for her. And maybe that's what drew her back. One Friday evening, after a quiet dinner, she sat beside me on the couch and took my hand. That same hand she hadn't held in weeks. I feel like I've been losing you, she said softly. I didn't respond right away. I looked at her, not the woman I once adored blindly, but the woman sitting next to me now. Her eyes searched mine, maybe for forgiveness, maybe for reassurance that her secret was still safe. I think we both got lost, I replied, almost in a whisper. She rested her head on my shoulder. It was such a familiar gesture, and yet it felt like it belonged to someone else's memory. In that moment, I realized something important. She was no longer my Claire. Not really. She belonged to a version of our life that had already ended, and I was the only one still pretending it hadn't. Over the next few weeks, I kept my calm. I cooked dinner. We watched shows together. She even suggested we take a short trip to the mountains. Just the two of us, she said. I agreed, but I wasn't going for romance. I was going for clarity. The weekend was pleasant, peaceful even. But I could see it, how she was trying too hard. The sudden affection, the way she reached for my hand in public. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was fear. She felt something shifting beneath her. She just didn't know what it was yet. One evening, during the trip, I stepped out to the deck while she was on a video call, allegedly with her sister. But when I walked back in quietly, I caught just enough of her voice to know it wasn't her sister. I don't know how long I can keep this up. He's been so different lately. It's like he knows something. I didn't say anything. I didn't storm out. I just poured myself a glass of wine, walked back onto the deck, and watched the sun sink behind the trees. Because in that moment, I wasn't the man she could manipulate anymore. I wasn't the husband clinging to a dying marriage. I was a man with a secret of my own, one I hadn't told her yet. You see, a few weeks back, after finding that receipt, I made another discovery. I found out who Julian was, and more importantly, I met him. I met Julian by accident. At least, that's what I let him believe. It was a Tuesday. I had taken a half day from work under the excuse of a dental appointment. Claire had mentioned once, offhandedly, that Julian liked to have lunch at the May cafe across from the hospital. Something about the soup being the best in town. Small details. People never realize what they reveal when they're not trying to hide. I went there alone, ordered a coffee, and waited. I didn't even know what he looked like. But eventually, a tall man with a neat beard and a sleek navy blazer walked in like he owned the place. The barista greeted him by name, Julian. I watched him for a while, not with hatred, not with jealousy, but with curiosity. What was it about this man that had drawn my wife in? He didn't seem particularly charming. He laughed too loudly, checked his phone constantly. The way he talked to the waitress, it wasn't rude, but it wasn't kind either. He exuded confidence, yes, but there was an arrogance to it, a carelessness, like people were pawns on a board and he was always in control. It was then I realized something surprising. I didn't envy him. If anything, I pitied him. After a while, I approached him, calmly, casually, sat down at the table next to his and pretended to notice him for the first time. "You work at St. Agnes, right?" I asked. He looked up, surprised. "Yeah, you too." I smiled. "My wife does. Claire, she's in surgical." His smile faltered for a split second, barely noticeable. But it was enough. "Oh yeah, Claire," he said, recovering. "I've seen her around. Good surgeon." "That she is," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "Been married 10 years next spring." "Wow, that's impressive," he muttered. I leaned in slightly. "Marriage is a strange thing, isn't it? You think you know someone. You build a life with them. But sometimes, there are pieces you never see. Until one day, you open the wrong drawer." His eyes flicked, to me, fast, like a prey sensing a predator too late. I held his gaze and smiled. "Nice talking to you, Julian." Then I left. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I just needed him to know. I knew. That night, Claire came home early. She seemed on edge. Her smiles were tight, her voice a little higher than usual. I waited for her to say something, to confess, but she didn't. Instead, she sat beside me on the couch and asked, "Are we okay?" I turned to her, studied her face. Her fear was subtle, but it was there. She was watching me closely, trying to gauge how much I knew. "Why wouldn't we be?" I asked. She shrugged. You've just been different lately. Quieter. I smiled. I've just had a lot on my mind. She leaned her head on my shoulder again. That same old gesture, but now it felt desperate, like a child clinging to a version of safety that no longer existed. I didn't move. Over the next few days, she became more attentive than ever. Made dinner, sent texts throughout the day, even suggested we revisit our wedding vows, something she had never brought up before. It would have been almost touching, if I hadn't already seen the cracks forming underneath. Julian stopped showing up in her stories. She didn't mention work as much. Her phone, once kept under lock and key, now lay openly on the counter, as if that would prove her innocence. But the letters were still in the drawer, still tied with that same ribbon. She hadn't thrown them away. And that told me everything I needed to know. You don't keep souvenirs from a mistake. You keep them from a memory you haven't let go of. I didn't confront her, not yet, because the truth is, I wasn't ready either. Not for the fight, not for the fallout. I needed to do this my way, so I started planning. Not a revenge plot, not some dramatic public humiliation, just a moment of truth. A moment where everything she'd hidden would sit in front of her quietly, and she would have no more lies left to give. I reached out to a friend of mine. He worked in private events and owed me a favor. I asked him to help me book a small venue, a dinner for two, private, intimate, elegant. I told Claire it was a surprise, that I wanted to rekindle something. Her eyes lit up like a girl being asked to prom. That hurt more than I expected, because, despite everything, a part of me still wanted it to be real, still wanted her to be real. She spent days preparing, bought a new dress, got her nails done. I watched her float through the house like she was falling in love again. But the truth was, she was just trying to escape the consequences that were already waiting. On the night of the dinner, I picked her up like old times, told her she looked beautiful. She blushed. I meant it. Even after everything, she was still beautiful to me. We arrived at the venue, a rooftop overlooking the city, quiet and lit with warm lanterns, a private table set for two, music in the background. Wine waiting. She was glowing. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table and said, "I missed this. I missed us." And I almost believed her, until I reached into my pocket and placed a single envelope in front of her. Her hand froze. She didn't speak. I didn't explain. Just looked at her and said, "I found them." And the look in her eyes, when everything collapsed in one heartbeat, that was the moment I knew. The performance was over. Claire didn't touch the envelope. Her fingers hovered near it, trembling slightly, as if just brushing the paper might make it all real. I watched her face, how her eyes darted from the envelope to me, then quickly down to the table, as though she was searching for a script that didn't exist. She finally whispered, "What is this?" I didn't blink. "You already know." Her lip quivered. "James, I held up a hand, not to silence her, but to stop her from ruining what little dignity she still had in this moment. "I'm not here to hear lies," I said softly. "Not tonight." She looked away, blinking rapidly. The wind picked up slightly, brushing her hair across her cheek. She didn't bother to fix it. For once she looked small. For a moment, I remembered the first time I saw her cry. Back in college. She had failed an exam and thought it meant she wasn't good enough. I had held her then, told her she was brilliant, reminded her of everything she was capable of. Now, I simply watched. "I was lonely," she said finally, voice so faint it could have been mistaken for wind. "You were distant. We stopped being us." I nodded. "So you found someone else to write you poems, to touch your hair, to make you feel wanted?" She didn't respond. "I don't blame you for needing more," I continued. "But I do blame you for not telling me you were looking." elsewhere to find it. She buried her face in her hands. I didn't reach for her. I let the silence stretch. Then I pulled a second envelope from my jacket. This one was addressed to Julian. She looked at it like it was radioactive. I met him, I said, voice even. We had coffee. He seemed confident. Until I told him who I was. Her eyes widened. He didn't know, she asked. I shook my head slowly. No. And when he found out, he couldn't get away fast enough. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it again. I slid the second envelope across the table. You might want to read that later. It's from him. He left it at the cafe. I told the waitress to give it to me if he didn't come back. She stared at the envelope like it was her final breath. I took a slow sip of wine. Let it sit on my tongue. Then I said, you once told me I wasn't romantic anymore. She flinched. And maybe I wasn't. Maybe I let life get in the way. The stress, the deadlines, the habits we fall into without noticing. But I never stopped loving you, Claire. I just stopped being loud about it. She opened her mouth, but no words came. I was always faithful, even when I was tired, even when I felt invisible. Because love, for me, isn't a letter tied with a ribbon. It's laundry folded at 2 a.m. It's waiting in hospital parking lots. It's staying when things get boring or hard. Tears rolled down her cheeks now, quiet and ashamed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her of anything more than what she'd already shown me. I just laid it bare. I'm not here to punish you, I said gently. That's not why I brought you here. She looked up through teary lashes. Then why? I leaned in just slightly. Because I wanted you to feel it. Feel what? I looked her straight in the eyes. The moment you realize what you lost. And the fact that you can't ever get it back. The candle between us flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a violinist played a soft tune. It was a beautiful night. Romantic even. But it wasn't a reconciliation. It was a farewell. Claire sat back in her chair, clutching her hands in her lap like a child waiting to be scolded. But I wasn't angry, just finished. I booked you a ride home, I said calmly. Your things will be packed. They'll arrive tomorrow. I've already spoken to a lawyer. She stared at me in shock. You're divorcing me. I stood up, fixing my jacket. No, I said quietly. You divorced me. The day you chose someone else. I walked away then, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because staying would have hurt me more. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't call anyone. I just sat on the couch in the quiet, surrounded by the stillness of a house that no longer felt like home, but finally, felt honest. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. Claire had left before sunrise. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave a note, just the faint scent of her perfume still lingering on the bedsheets. And the second envelope I had handed her, torn open, left on the kitchen table like the remains of something broken and forgotten. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it said. Julian wasn't the man she thought he was, and I wasn't the man she thought she could outsmart. What she never realized was that I'd stopped playing her game the moment I discovered those letters. From that moment on, I wrote my own rules. But the real twist, it wasn't just that I knew about the affair. It was that I'd known for a lot longer than she thought. Months before I ever opened that drawer, I already had my suspicions. But instead of confronting her, I started protecting myself quietly, legally, financially, emotionally. You see, I'm not just some quiet guy in IT. I co-founded the firm I work for, built it from scratch. On paper, my name appears buried under corporate layers. But behind the scenes, I own more than she ever knew. We had a prenup. She thought it was standard. She never read the fine print. It stated clearly, infidelity forfeited all claims to marital assets. I added that clause when we first got engaged. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I believed that if someone truly loved you, They'd never be afraid of that kind of clause. She signed it without hesitation, without reading it. And now, she had no claim to the house, none to the savings, none to the company shares, not even the vacation home she loved so much up north. It would all be mine. I didn't want to ruin her. I wasn't seeking revenge, but I was protecting the life I had built, the life she tried to shatter with sweet words and handwritten lies. Later that week, she called me. Her voice was small, almost childlike. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't say anything. She went on. He doesn't want to see me, Julian. He said it was just fun, that he never intended for it to become real. I still didn't speak. He blocked me, she added with a broken laugh. Can you believe that? I can, I replied calmly. Because he didn't love you, Claire. He used you to fill a space you didn't even realize was empty. And you let him. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing, ragged, uneven, like someone trying not to drown. I miss you, she finally said. Not the house or the gifts, just you. For the first time in weeks, I felt something stir inside me, but it wasn't longing. It was sadness, for the version of her I used to know, the version I used to love. You don't miss me, I said gently. You miss the man who loved you unconditionally, the man who would have done anything to make you happy. But that man died the day he found your lies tied up in ribbon. There was silence on the line, then a sob, and then nothing. I never heard from Julian again. I assume he found someone else to write letters to. Someone easier, more available, less complicated. Claire moved in with her sister for a while, tried texting me a few times, but I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. I just didn't have anything left to say. A month later, I filed the papers. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. 3 months later, I was sitting in my studio painting a quiet lake scene when I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small box. And inside the box were all the letters. The same ones I had found in her drawer. No note. No apology. Just the past, returned to its rightful owner. I burned them that night, not out of spite, but out of peace, because sometimes the only way to move on is to let the fire cleanse what the heart can't carry anymore. And as the paper curled and blackened in the flames, I finally felt it. Freedom. Not the kind you celebrate with fireworks or loud music, but the kind that comes with silence, with closure, with knowing that I had lost something, but saved myself. It's been nearly a year now. Funny how time bends when you're healing. Some days feel like an eternity. Others slip through your fingers like sand. But eventually, the weight eases. The ache becomes quieter. The questions lose their power. And one day, you wake up and realize you survived. I still live in the same house. I thought about moving once, selling it, erasing the memories tied to each corner. But I didn't. Not out of stubbornness, but because the house wasn't the problem. The silence wasn't the enemy. It was the lies that poisoned the air. Now, I open windows in the morning, let the light in. I repainted the walls. Not to forget her, but to reclaim the space, to make it mine again. The guest room is now my painting studio. I've finished 3 pieces since then, landscapes mostly. Calm ones, lakes, hills, skies that feel like they're holding their breath. People ask me if I'm dating again, if I've moved on. The truth is, I'm not in a hurry. Because healing isn't a race. It's not something you cross off a checklist or measure in weeks. It's choosing every day not to let someone else's betrayal define how you love again. And yes, I do want love again. Not a perfect love. Not some dramatic, notebook-style romance. Just someone who chooses me, even on the quiet days. Someone who doesn't need flowers or surprises to know she's valued. And someone who, when things get hard, doesn't write letters to someone else. Claire taught me many things. She taught me how easy it is to drift, how subtle betrayal can be, how people fall not with explosions, but with silence, with small daily choices that pull them away from you until they're already gone. But she also taught me resilience. She taught me the strength of staying kind when it would be easier to be cruel. She taught me the power of walking away with dignity intact. And most of all, she reminded me of who I am when no one's watching. I still remember the man she said I wasn't anymore. "You're not romantic," she told me. But I know now. I never stopped being romantic. I just stopped being loud about it. Because real love isn't always grand gestures and candlelit dinners. Sometimes it's in the way you fold someone's laundry, the way you remember their favorite mug, the way you choose them over and over again, even when life gets messy. So if someone ever tells you that you've stopped being romantic, look closely. Ask yourself, have you really stopped? Or have they simply stopped seeing it? These days, I spend more time with myself. I've learned to enjoy my own company, to pour a glass of wine without needing a reason, to watch the sunset and not feel the need to share it, just to validate it. There's peace in that, a quiet kind of happiness. One that isn't built on someone else's promises, but on your own truth. Claire? I don't hate her. I think deep down, she was just lost, searching for something she thought she had lost in me, but had truly lost in herself. I hope she finds it one day. But as for me, I already have, and I'm not looking back.